Welcome to Layers of Communication with your host, Lydia Taggart. Life presents experiences that add layers to who we are and how we see the world, affecting how we communicate. Lydia is here to take apart the layers and create new ways to connect and build relationships. So now, please welcome the host of Layers of Communication, your core boss, Lydia Taggart.
This is Lydia Taggart. I'm your host for Layers of Communication on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're accepting your calls today at 1-866-451-1451. Today we're going to be talking about the inner bullies and what do we do about those inner bullies. And we have these voices inside our head, and I personally am very much an intuitive kind of person. I follow my heart a lot more than my head. And sometimes it gets me into trouble, but sometimes it is really, really awesome. Our special guest today is one of those people that I met because I followed my heart and the good voices in my head. Brittany Fowler, she was one of the people who was driving me home from an event. So I want to tell you this story. I entered a contest, and the winner, which was me, I got to win, you won a retreat for mentoring and speaking. And so when I found out that it wasn't local, and I thought, oh, well, I guess I didn't really win that. And so the people that were involved in that arranged for me to meet people to carpool with. So here I am, this excited little person. About 3 years ago, I guess I wasn't all that little. Anyway, 3 years ago, just following that voice in my head that said, you should enter this contest. Oh, look, you won. Oh, you should go with some total strangers down there and have a great time. And I'm so glad that I did that. But, you know, when you think about meeting total strangers that way, it could be dangerous. So anyway, in the long run, it was really fantastic. It's the day that I decided to start my business because somebody there said to me, oh, are you speaking at the conference tomorrow? I'm so excited to hear your message. I thought, oh, maybe I should think about that. And on the way home, Brittany was my driver, my carpool buddy friend, and she wasn't a stranger anymore at that point. We spend a long drive together, a couple hours, then you get to be friends. And I just love Brittany. I'm so glad that she's here to visit with us about the inner bullies, because sometimes it can be hard to tell which voice is good for us and which one is not so good for us. They all kind of try to trick us and beat us down. So let me tell you a little bit about Brittany. She is the author. Her book is The Inner Bully Beatdown. And at a young age, she was bullied by her peers and learned to rise above the damaging self-talk. That's what the inner voices, our self-talk, a lot of times is called. So many things, but that's what it is. Brittany has been a cheerleader, beauty queen, national champion, ballroom dancer. I think that one sounds exciting, but not as exciting as college athlete, middle linebacker, and fullback for high school tackle football. She's a mother of a son and a daughter, and Brittany's been through many challenging and triumphant times. She has a degree in communications and is sure to deliver the most poignant message for our audience. And I'm so excited that she's here to do just that. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lydia. It's good to hear your voice, and thank you for having me on. It's exciting.
Yeah, I don't think that we've actually talked voice to voice.
We haven't talked in a while.
So inner bullies, how do you tell the difference? And what we really want to get to is how do we help our children and others decide the difference, and what do we do about these inner voices?
Right. So a good segue into this is understanding that every time that we kind of experience something dramatic or traumatic in our lives, we form a belief about that experience. We form a belief about ourselves, how we think about ourselves, or our self-identity, I like to call it. And so sometimes when we believe these things to be true, they're actually not truths, right? They're actually just really annoying inner bullies that are just there because you decided to let them set up shop in your head, so to speak. So I like to think of inner bullies as this temporary visitors, right, that we can always kick out. We always have the power to. It might be a little harder sometimes, all right? Just like during the holidays when you have those guests, you're like, I wish I could kick you out, but I cannot. But like, we can always kick out these inner bullies because they're not here to stay, right? Like, so you can choose, right? So at this very moment, you can choose whether you want them to stay, right, or to leave. And just know that you have that power. And teaching that to a child is one of the most valuable things that they can learn growing up. It's not math, it's not science, it's not reading. Well, reading's important, but it's this understanding that when a child understands that they have the power to think and act and feel a certain way, you actually guard them the rest of their lives to be able to be resilient. And that's one of my goals, is to really help women and children become more resilient in a world that's so toxic.
Oh, so that is a fantastic goal. I share that goal with you. But it's more than just the voices in our heads. It's when we start believing these negative, wrong lies that then they turn into resident bullies. Is that right? Right.
And think about it like a bird flying overhead. You go, oh, that's a pretty bird, or oh, that's a cool eagle, right? It flies over, and then you can either choose to fascinate your your attention on it, so that you watch it everywhere it goes, and eventually you can choose to not watch it, okay? Or you can choose to let it, hey, come nest in my head. Like, we all have these past. So think of birds as these negative thoughts. We all have negative thoughts, right? But the inner bullies come when we let them set up shop or nest within our head continually and cause us to feel negatively. That's the big difference between just negative voices and then these inner bullies, because these inner bullies just wreak havoc on your emotions, on your relationships, and sometimes they get so embedded within your belief system and subconscious that you don't even know that they're there. And those are the camouflage bullies that I recently, which caused me to write the book. So there is a difference between negative voices and just inner bullies. The inner bullies they wreak the most havoc and they cause the most damage in your relationships. They're the self-sabotagers, right?
Okay, so we might not know they're there. They're camouflage. What do we do about that when we don't even know that they're there? How do we identify them as more than just a passing thought? Or we have a passing thought over and over and over again, but it's still just a passing thought.
Yeah. So the first step I take you through in my book, The Inner Bully Beatdown, there's 4 steps to this process. One is, identifying them, which sometimes is the hardest thing, but is actually pretty simple if you have somebody to guide you through it, or if you do some self-guided journaling. So identifying, and then select which bully you want to terminate, right? Because that's the second step, because there's always more than one. It always seems like there's not just one bully, there's multiple in everybody's brain there. And the third step is to terminate that bully, and the fourth step is to rejuvenate that space that had so much damage to it. So the first step is to find, right, and to identify them. So what we really need to do is be honest. I always teach, you cannot blame others for the soup that you are eating. Like, our lives are this soup, right? All these ingredients of the choices that we made and situations that we let to fester, and your soup may taste disgusting, and so you may not like your life right now. That's okay, but you cannot blame others for it. Okay, so first thing is you have to really decide that I'm not going to blame others for what I'm experiencing right now. And that may be really difficult, because when we go through traumatic or dramatic experiences, I use the word dramatic because you don't always have to be abused to have trauma in your life, right? So, right. But there's always dramatic experiences that can also cause these inner bullies. So dramatic or traumatic experiences. And so the first step is to choose not to blame. And that also comes with the commitment of honesty to yourself, because it's not, once you go down this path of, I'm going to get rid of this and I want to change and I would be better, you have to be 100% committed, because when it comes time to terminate these bullies, it's not a fun process. There's a lot of emotion that comes up. There's probably a lot of memories that come up. But if you're willing to go through the process, you need to decide those two things. So the best way to do that in identifying bullies is to look at your life and take a good inventory of it, right? So write down, what would I like to experience better in my life? What would I like to experience more of in my life? Why am I not experiencing that now? You get into this question mode, and this is a tool that you can help with your children as well. You get into question mode and listening mode. It's without judgment, right? Question and listening without judgment.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll talk about more about the questioning process and without judgment. That, I think, is the big key to this, without judgment, not blaming. I see blame and judgment as a two-sided coin. They come together. So after this break, we'll be back and talk more with Brittany Fowler about that. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart, for Layers in Communication. This is the BBM Global Network on TuneIn Radio. Welcome back to the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. This is Layers of Communication. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. We are accepting your calls at 1-866-451-1451. If you want to join our conversation with Brittany Fowler about our inner bullies, we would love to have you join us. Just before the break, we were talking about the need to ask questions and really listen without judgment, and how that can kind of coincide with blame, that we need to not be blaming others for the soup that we're eating. I love that visual too, Brittany. Tell us more about this questioning our children.
Yeah, so it's really important, right, that we don't judge what our children are actually telling us that's in their head, because they're scared to tell us, right, of the negative things that are going on. And just because I think it's this authoritarian image that they have in their head of, oh no, like I'm not measuring up, right? They don't use those words because they're teenager or younger, right, or something, but they just think, I'm going to get in trouble, like if I'm thinking this way or I'm acting this way. But really, so it's important just to have that low-key judgment, like just really listening and putting on your good ears. And I know a lot of parents out there are super good at that, but it's just a good reminder. So during the questioning phase, one thing that's really important, it doesn't always have to be out loud, right? It's more, this is a very experiential experience. That's bad, double words there, but it's the act of writing and getting the words out on paper, right, or computer or whatever works for you best, really causes your brain to let down the guard of, okay, we're actually going there, right? Because a lot of times your brain will keep you safe by just avoiding it. And one thing that as you're questioning your children, or helping them see these questions of, hey, what's wrong today? Or how'd that go? Or is she bugging you? Things like that. Just get in question mode. But if they say, I don't know, realize that is the biggest scapegoat that everybody has ever, ever come up with.
Right.
I don't know. Right. Kids use that all the time. Even my 5-year-old son, I'll be like, what happened? I don't know. Yes, you do. Right. And I even when I mentor people, they go into this mode of, I don't know. Yes, you, and I have to continue. And I sit there in silence and I say, yes, you do. You're just like not willing to go there yet.
Yeah, it's like that. You're looking for the salt shaker and you can't find it. You want somebody else to go find it. It's right in front of your nose, but you can't see it.
Right.
You literally can't see it. There's a psychological term that I don't remember for it, that you literally block out what you don't want to deal with.
Right. So, exactly. And so it's more difficult if you are going to be questioning your children, for them to say things out loud, because they may not want to hear it, what's in their head, right? So you could invite them, hey, why don't you just write it down? Write down what's really bothering you, and no judgment. I'll read it, right? And so, because a lot of times, I talk with mothers who have children, or mostly girls, that will cut, right? And that self-mutilation, and they just go, I don't know how to help her. I said, just listen. You need to listen without judgment. And I know you're worried for your child, and I know that this is a long road, and they're to the point where they feel like they're worth zero. I worked at a girls' home first year out of college, and one of my most fulfilling jobs ever that I've ever had is working at that home. But I can tell you that out of all the girls that came through, and most of them, had trauma. Some of them had mental disorders like bipolar and things like that, and a lot of them had been raped at a young age, and their parents didn't know, but then they started acting out, and then things like that. They just came to this home because their parents didn't know what to do with them, right? They didn't know how to help them. And of all the girls that I ever spoke with, there was one common denominator. And when they really got real with me, that common denominator was, I don't think I'm good. I don't think I'm a good person. And that really stemmed from a deeper belief of, I don't know who I am. Right? They get lost in this world of the media telling them who they should be, or Instagram people telling them how they should be or how they should dress, and they lose a self-identity. And that kind of happened with me when I was going through like my bullying experiences growing up. I was severely overweight for the time. Now it's kind of commonplace, like how big I was, but back then it was a novelty for a child to be overweight. And so I was the brunt of a lot of bullying and a lot of traumatic experiences. But I always knew that I could come home to a safe place. And I really applaud my parents for hosting that space for me, because I felt like I could open up to them. There was no judgment. It was pure acceptance, and they would dig it out of me. What happened? How did that happen? How does that make you feel? And they would dig it out so that I wouldn't stuff it. And I think that's important too as a parent. Like when you see your child suffering, don't let them push you out. Like it's a balance. I understand that, but if you let them internalize this traumatic experiences, guess what? They're going to form this belief about themselves that they just don't matter, that they will form this false sense of identity. And I think that's important as well.
Yep. Yeah. We're going to talk more after this break with Brittany Fowler about our false identities and how to help our children more. One question I'm going to ask is about those kids that don't have that supportive home. I'm Lydia Taggart, your host for Layers of Communication, and this is the TuneIn Radio app and BBM Global Network. Welcome back to Layers of Communication, TuneIn Radio and the BBM Global Network. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. We're accepting your calls at 1-866-451-1451, and we are visiting today with Brittany Fowler about our inner bullies. Before the break, we were talking about providing a safe place at home for our kids. So, Brittany, what do we do if we don't really have that safe environment for our kids? If we're already in that chaos of, oh no, they're a crazy teenager and we don't have that established already, is there something we can do? I don't ever believe that it's too late. What do you suggest for those kinds of situations?
Well, are you talking as the parent, or are you talking for the kid knowing, right? Like, what do you do as a parent, or what do you do as the kid maybe who doesn't feel safe? If you're talking both. From the okay. So let's just kind of break this down. So if you're a parent and you feel like you've already kind of lost control of your child, and you know that there's issues going on, right? Or they wouldn't be acting the way that they're acting. You need to go back to the base level of helping them feel like they belong, right? They need to feel like they belong in your home and that they matter. Not just physical space, right? Like a room or a bed or things like that, but that they matter in the family. One of the things that you can help do is not talk at them, but help them experience ways that they feel their value. So provide experiences where they're sharing their talents with the family, where you're outgoing, doing things that they want to do, and just experiencing them and getting to know them. Because as a teenager, right, like everybody thinks when they're a teenager, and I was the same way, like, you don't get me, you don't understand me, you don't know me. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of get this attitude about you, and that can be really difficult if they're stubborn or hard-headed. But helping them feel like they belong and will help them feel like they are safe in their environment to open up. You cannot preach at them if you do not have that base layer, like that it will go in one ear and out the other, right? And that's, so you need to create experiences. That would be my number one tip for parents. And second thing too is, if you are, so say you're a teenager, right? And you don't feel like you have a safe home. Maybe you have a broken parent situation. Maybe have no parents, you're in foster care or something. Like, find a role model. Every child has a role model, right? That they can go to. Find one person where you can go and you feel safe, right? And find that. So you need to find belonging so that you can help see your true self identity, because this identity of I don't matter, I'm not good enough. If you only know what I did, you wouldn't love me. Things like that. Those are just your inner bullies talking. But as a teenager, if you haven't been taught growing up that that's not truth, that's just what you believe, there's a difference, right? But it's hard for everybody to kind of take those apart and see them differently. But once they can be taught those principles, right, then they can start to change and open up and realize that, their life doesn't have to suck all the time, right? So I hope that answered the question. But
yes, and I think even before teens, I think that younger kids, I think these trials that we lump as teenager trials, I think they're trickling down into the younger ages a lot. I've known of several way too many kids that are like 8 or 9, 10 years old thinking that they need to commit suicide. And that just breaks my heart. But I think everyone needs a role model, somebody there that is just going to be there for them. Even as an adult, if we're just confined to our family, then our resources are limited. And I think we need to branch out and have at least one person somewhere that we can really trust and be friends with. My kids, they're in elementary school, and for several years, they've just been really good friends with this teacher that's in 6th grade. And they're in her class now. But for 3 or 4 years, they just knew her as their older brother's teacher. And they got that relationship going with her. And I just love her stepping into that role. And how can we trust that there's really going to be somebody there for us that we can open up with and ask to be a role model, or even just put them in that place? We don't need to ask them to be there, but to have them in that position for ourselves. Do you have any ideas on that, Brittany? How can we get a role model?
I think it depends on, now, as an adult, I can answer this question a lot easier than I can when I was a teenager, right? As an adult, trying to find a role model, right, is really trying to connect with people who are authentic. I think it's a matter, like you said, it's a matter of trust. And I think with so much fake news, but in our own lives, right? Not talking about the media, but fake news in our streams and things, that we have a hard time trusting those who we don't Facebook stalk forever, right? So we need to Facebook stalk them and also understand what they're really about. Like, before I even will combine my efforts with somebody, I will watch them and watch what they're doing over time, right? Because anybody can post, or anybody can put on a facade for 2 weeks. Like, everybody can live a lie for 2 weeks, right? That's easy. But nobody really can live a lie past 3 months. And true natures really come out, either in person or online, about how a person really acts and what they're really about. And so it's important to, if you're trying to find positive influences in your life, that you get rid of the negative influences in your life, because getting rid of those and cutting those ties with those emotionally draining people actually opens up space for you to receive more people in your life who you want, right? You have to make space
Wow.
for the things that you want.
Making space. That's a really good point. We're going to take a break again. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. This is Layers of Communication. We're on TuneIn Radio and the BBM Global Network. You can connect with us at lydiataggart.com, and we'll be back really soon. Welcome back. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. This is Layers of Communication on the TuneIn Radio Network and BBM Global Network. We accept your calls at 1-866-451-1451. Today we're talking with Brittany Fowler about our inner bullies and helping our children deal with those, not just the negative voices, but those beliefs that we've bought into those sayings that those negative voices have told us, and they've become inner bullies taking up residence now. And just before the break, we were just talking about cutting the negative relationships out so we can make space for more positive and finding role models. So, Brittany, when we cut the negative relationships, that to me sounds so scary, to decide this person isn't worth being in my life anymore. They're really dragging me down. How would somebody go about getting rid of a relationship, especially if it's been a long-term relationship? Like over 5 years, we've known this person. I think that most people who are really dragging us down, we've known them for a long time. They've been in our life for a long time, or they wouldn't have that effect on us usually if we've just met them and we go, oh, I don't think that you're good for me, and we move on, right? But how do we cut these negative relationships that have really been established?
Mm-hmm. So I understand the hesitancy there, because it's really hard when you have a toxic family member, right, to cut ties there. So let's start small. One thing that I've learned to do over the past couple of years that has been very helpful for me in cutting these toxic relationships out of my life is that realizing that even people from my childhood, I still have a relationship with. I still have this energetic tie to them that is negative and very draining. Once I started to cut these ties and let them go out of my life, these people that are not even really in my life physically anymore, but I still think about them, right? I think about them. I think about the situations that happened that were negative, that I didn't love, and I have never really forgiven them. When you say I forgive somebody, right, it doesn't mean that you accept what they did was right or okay. But it allows you to cut the energetic tie with them so that they will quit setting up space in your life that you really didn't even know was being crowded. So if you can think about, like, why do people say that, oh, you have a lot of emotional baggage? What does that mean? It means that you have so many negative experiences in your life that you just will not let go of. And that's kind of the same way. So imagine this, right? You're at the airport and you got those little, like, those push carts for the luggage. Now imagine all of your emotional luggage there, but now imagine all the people in your life that were a part of that emotional baggage, and then try and pile them on top of it, right? And so you have this pyramid of all of this negativity in your life that you're hauling around. Don't you want to make that lighter? Don't you want to get rid of that? Don't you want to make space for somebody positive to hop on your, like, wagon, so to speak? So you have to say, okay, so take one person from your luggage bin and say, look, I need to talk to you, right? And you're not talking to them physically, right? You're talking to them kind of like just emotionally, and you're thinking of them being like, look, I'm going to let you go. I don't want this negativity in my life anymore. You really hurt me from A, B, C, D, or I didn't like that you did this, blah, 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 because then I'm sorry too that I've harbored so many negative feelings towards you, but I forgive you. I forgive you, and move on, like, and just let them leave. Like, you just picture them getting up off your luggage cart and letting them walk away, right? You give them permission to leave. And like I said at the beginning, like, you have to understand that you have this power that you can invite people into your life and dismiss people in your life that do not serve you. Right. So start small. So think in the past. Okay, who was in my life, maybe not anymore, that I still harbor negative feelings towards. That's who you start with, right? So as you start cutting those ties, you'll begin to feel lighter. You'll begin to feel more free. You'll begin to feel like all of a sudden happier, because I am a true believer that we are all connected energetically to those people that we have had relationships with and those people that we have relationships with. Like, how many times have you gotten a urge or a prompting, right, to call an old friend? Oh, I get it all the time, but it's just randomly out of the blue, like 9 months later. And then you connect and you realize, yes, like I needed to connect with you, right? Like, so we're all have these energetic ties, as you will. So when you're talking about people that are currently in your life that are toxic for your like well-being, that becomes a bit more complicated. But you still kind of go through the same process. Again, you don't yell at their face and you say, I hate that you did this and yada yada, and you hurt my family and this is not blah blah blah. That just causes way more drama, right? We want less drama and less toxicity in our relationships. So one of the things is you can talk to them energetically. You can imagine them sitting, like if you're driving in the car, imagine them sitting in the passenger seat and be like, look, I need to talk to you. I'm going to say everything negative that is going through my mind, so it's out of my brain and just out of me, and then say, you know what, I forgive you, or I let you go, or you know, I forgive you. And guess what? The next time you see that person, your relationship has changed. It really has, and you can do this over and over and over and over again. And I was talking to my mom about this. We have some drama in our family. She says, well, what if I'm not ready to forgive? You know, what if I'm not ready to forgive? And that is such a hard question, because when you have something traumatic happen to you and you just can't find the words to forgive, you can say, I want to forgive you, and I'm working up to that, right? But even voicing that intention of, look, I'm struggling here, but I really want to forgive you. Like, it takes you one step closer to be able to fully do that one day, right? And that doesn't mean that that's not therapeutic for you to do that. It just means, like, you don't have to do it all or nothing. Like, you can take the baby steps that help you feel better about yourself and feel better about that relationship. And even if it's a hope or an intention that, hey, look, I'm going to just cut you out of my life for energetically. I'm just cutting this. I cannot feel this way anymore. I cannot feel this burden anymore. Like, I want it gone. With it. And most of the time that doesn't, and sometimes it's almost impossible to get rid of a toxic relationship if it's family. Like, that's really difficult.
Right. But I love that. We have to be honest with ourselves too. If we're not ready to forgive, then it's not going to be a thing that really happens if we're not ready to. But saying that I want to and setting that intention that we're going to work up to it, that's beautiful.
And not only that, they have a lot of anger. If you can find a way, this goes with terminating that inner bully. If you can get rid of that anger, and I have a lot of great things in my book, great activities to get rid of that anger, it's a lot easier to forgive, right? So if you have not healed from the anger yet, that's the step that you really need to take before you can fully forgive.
Resolving your anger comes before being able to forgive. That is so true. We'll talk more after the break with Brittany Fowler about conquering and dealing with our inner bullies and getting rid of those negative emotional relationships. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. This is the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio, and this is Layers of Communication. Welcome back to Layers of Communication. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart, and you're listening to the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're visiting today with Brittany Fowler about our inner bullies and helping our children deal with those inner bullies. Before the break, we were talking about how important it is to heal our anger first before we're able to forgive. And Brittany, you've got lots of tips in your book, but what is one that will make the biggest impact for our listeners on how we can heal our anger if we're just not ready to forgive because we still have that anger? What can we do?
Well, first you need to, before I tell you this, you need to decide that you want to get rid of the anger. Sometimes people get so used to the festering that it's normal for them, and that they don't realize that it is being kind of toxic to their relationship, or they enjoy it because it's kind of drama and they can talk about it with their friends, and right. So it becomes this point where you're either going to get rid of it, right, or you're gonna keep it because you like the drama. So
Right. And sometimes it's also a protection for us. It's to keep us safe. If we don't feel safe, like we talked earlier, anger can be a protective kind of thing that maybe we don't need to get rid of it if it's going to be serving us. So,
right. And the second thing you need to understand too is that anger is a secondary emotion. Why do we get angry? Because we've been hurt. We're sad, right? Most of the time, that's why we feel anger. So understanding that anger is basically a reaction to a first emotion. Kind of think about that too. But so as I say this, the best way to release anger is to actually physically break something. Throw it across the room, break something. So, and yell while you're doing it. Like you have this, anger is also kind of described as passion, right? You have this, like, I just want to get it all out. And like, when you're angry, what do you want to do? Like men, they punch walls. Women, we just like yell, right? So getting that out and releasing that is actually a physical experience. I've never really been able to get rid of anger by just sitting, right? So I actually have to get up and do something. So one thing is I go to the thrift store and buy a set of plates. They're usually like 50 cents a plate or whatever, like a ceramic plate. And write on the plate, like, I'm angry because this happened, or, you know, you can write profanities if that's your jam. Like, you just write down everything that's in your head on these plates, and then you throw them against the wall, right? You break them and you yell and you get rid of it and you say, and most of the time after you do that, or you can do it with light bulbs, right? You just throw and of course safety glasses. I'm not like, I don't know, we held light bulbs for all this stuff. It needs to be a physical experience. You need to yell. You need to go where you're alone, like go up in the mountains, go in a field and yell, like just get it out. Like, I'm so angry. Like, and then guess what happens? You usually cry afterwards, right? Because that crying, that is a very powerful emotion. And this is why I said you need to be ready, right? To really tackle these inner bullies, because when you start to beat them down, it's a full body experience, and it's not very fun. It hurts, but you need to release it. Like, this anger is toxic, and so you need to go through those exercises of getting rid of it so that you can invite more space for good things in your life. And also, one thing, if you're not into breaking things, one thing that has helped too is to write a letter that you never send. Right? If we have words that are festering in our heart and in our head, we can't embrace life fully. And so we need to get them out on paper or write an email that you never send. Again, you're never sending these so that you don't create more drama, right? That's what we don't need. We need less drama. But if you can quit festering on it, you'll create less drama in your life.
I love that. So we never send it. And it is a full body experience. When I think of the word bully, I think my first image of my mind is that big kid at school stealing the milk money and punching the little kid in the nose, right? It's a big physical presence. And if we can use our entire body to physically go through that experience, I'm always saying feelings are meant to be felt. And truly feel it and experience it so we can move past it, go beyond it, and to quit festering in it. Like you said, that's great. And I think maybe writing a letter, if we're a little bit nervous about breaking things, that might be a good way to work up towards having that full experience. Because sometimes the idea of confronting a bully is scary. That's very scary.
Right.
And so I appreciate you sharing all these things with us. You've got a lot more in your book. Tell us more about your book and where our audience can find you and your book.
Yeah, so I am, my website right now currently is Brittany Delivers. That's BRITTANY, delivers.com. And that's mostly just the info and a few blogs. And you can buy my book from there, but I recommend that you actually just buy it from Amazon. It's faster shipping. So you can find me on Amazon. Just search Inner Bully Beatdown, and it will pop right up. I'm also, of course, I'm on all social media. I do Facebook and Instagram mostly. And so you can find me there, Brittany E. Fowler or Brittany Delivers. And so, yeah, so more about my book. It really goes through kind of the process of, in my life, how I went through traumatic experiences with being bullied. But the more dramatic and traumatic experiences were the belief systems that I harbored because of those experiences, and then how that affected my life. These bullies of worry, or I'm not good enough, or I can't ask for help. That's a big bully that was in my life. And so, and so then I talk about how I went through the process of terminating that, and then the blessings that came from my life. And then at the end, there's a big call, right, for you not to be a bully to those around you. And I'll leave you with that today, is that your words matter always. And
yes,
there's no excuse for negative words, even if you're joking, and especially if you love somebody. Our words are powerful, and they mean something to that person. And so there's a big call. Don't be the bully for somebody else that causes them to create this self-doubt, that causes them to create this false identity that they're not a certain way. So I would invite you to just be uplifting and that role model to somebody else of how really we should be kind.
Yes, and sarcasm. We think it's funny, but sometimes we can't see how the people are taking it, and it might be something they think about more later and turns into a big stumbling block for them. Brittany, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to take another break, and we'll be back for our summary and our recap. And this is Layers of Communication, TuneIn Radio on BBM Global Network. I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. Thank you for being with us, Brittany. Like we said, you can find Brittany at BrittanyDelivers.com and find her book on Amazon, Googling Inner Bully Beatdown. Welcome back to the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. This is Layers of Communication, and I'm your host, Lydia Taggart. Today we've been visiting with Brittany Fowler and talking about the inner bullies. This is more than just the negative self-talk that we have, and she described it as a bird flying over, as we have negative thoughts come and they fly by. But when we decide to follow that bird around and make it part of our life instead of just a passing thought, that's when it becomes a bully. When we believe into those lies that are told, then that's what the inner bully is. And we have the option, we have the power to kick them out. We don't have to let them set up shop in our heads. So she said the first thing we need to do is identify and stop blaming. We cannot blame others. I love the way she said, we cannot blame others for the soup that we are eating. We need to just decide that that's not going to be a part of it. And this doesn't have to be out loud dealing with it. We can write it down. And I had an experience with one of my kids this week. He was just really, really pushed to his limits. And sometimes these things sneak up on us and we don't realize that we have an inner bully or some sort of negative belief system affecting our lives. And that's the trick too, because we don't recognize that they're there. And when I sat with him and I just listened, and sometimes we think that we need to take a turn to talk, but if you listen longer, then they will continue. And so I sat and I listened and didn't even say anything. I just waited and waited for probably 15, 20 minutes. And then he said, "Why aren't you saying anything?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just listening." And the tears did come, and he was fully engaged in feeling all of his feelings. It's a whole body experience. I love how Brittany said that to heal our anger first, one of the things she suggests we do is physically break and yell. It's a passion. It's a whole body experience. And I saw that with my son, and just totally physically all the way involved in expressing his emotions and how he feels. And if you're going to step into that, you need to know that it's not you, and protect yourself, not take all that on. Imagine your shields going up and all of the negative yuck that they're throwing out, they're getting it out, but it doesn't have to stick onto us. It can bounce off or slide down your shields and your protective layer there. And then when they get to the end and they say, why aren't you talking? Then you can say, well, I'm just listening because I know that you have a lot to say and I value your opinion. And that's just really magical to do that, to create that safe place for our family or loved ones to express themselves. Then it takes some patience. Okay, one of the other things that we need to do is connect with me at lydiataggart.com. I'd love to have a bigger conversation with you. If you have questions or things, or you want to download our free ebook there about creating time, I'd love to see you there at lydiataggart.com. This is Layers of Communication on TuneIn Radio and the BBM Global Network. I'm Lydia Taggart. Next week, we'll be seeing you here again. Stay close. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Layers of Communication with your host, Lydia Taggart. Tune in next week as we break through the layers in order to communicate and connect down to your core on Lydia Taggart's Layers of Communication.